Welcome to the Schomburg Center Literary Festival taking place June 14th to June 19th, 2021. The festival is generously sponsored by the New York Life Foundation and Deutsche Bank America's Foundation. Our program will begin shortly. Visit our website for the full festival lineup, schomburgcenterlitfest.org.
E flat, the tune's God.
What is the Schomburg Center? To me, it is home. The place where we come to see who we really are, not just somebody else's reflection of who we are.
The Schomburg Center is a place of culture. It's a place of history. It's a place of knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is a repository of all of the things that has documented our sense of worth as a people.
For me, that means that it is a place of immense power.
The Schomburg Center is a public research library and a cultural institution.
For the study of the Pan-African world.
It is perhaps the best in the world.
My Schomburg Center is Arturo Alfonso Schomburg.
Arturo Schomburg said, Black history and culture and intellect exists at a time when most people didn't believe that. He collected those evidences, and that became the beginning of the collection.
And it has expanded and has grown to where it is now a world-class institution.
It holds over 10 million items.
There's no parallel anywhere that brings to light what we as people of color have done, what we continue to do.
Black culture is all of culture. The universals that animate everyone's life happen here for all people.
The Schomburg, for me, is one of the center pillars of Harlem. When I started the journey of finding out about Red Rooster and Harlem, the very first place I went to was the Schomburg.
Researchers from around the world come and use what we have here.
I could not have written just about any of the books that I've written without the Schomburg Center's archives, resources.
The Schomburg Center is much more than a library. We encourage lifelong learning and exploration.
The Junior Scholars Program is a Saturday program with students from 5th grade to senior year in high school to help them learn about Black history and culture.
Learning about my history is important because it teaches me who I am.
The Schomburg Junior Scholars Program is going to do nothing but uplift them.
So many talented and brilliant people have walked the corridors of this amazing institution over the years. From Octavia Butler to Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, Ella Fitzgerald, Alvin Ailey, and Harry Belafonte, who graced the stage in this room of the American Negro Theater.
This place evokes great memories. It was a gift to us in our community to really try to find that space to reflect expressions of Black experience. I just knew that the environment and what I saw these young African Americans doing was a place I needed to be.
What is my Schomburg Center? I'm standing here at the Cosmogram, which underneath holds the ashes of the poet Langston Hughes. On the evening when this Cosmogram was dedicated, people began to empty out of the auditorium. A jazz trio struck up, and to my amazement, Amira Baraka went over and asked Maya Angelou for a dance. And they started to dance on top of the Cosmogram, on top of the ashes of Langston Hughes, and I felt what a fitting way to kiss the memory of Langston.
The Schomburg Center is a research institute and a library, but it's so much more than that.
There's something going on every day.
So many amazing people come here to talk about their creative craft, to share what inspires them. The Schomburg Center's collections help to tell stories even beyond our walls.
The Schomburg Center is here in this exhibition at MoMA, One Way Ticket, Jacob Lawrence's Migration Series. We depend on the resources of the Schomburg to enable us to tell this story. Thinking about the implications of the past on the present is absolutely crucial for understanding the next steps, understanding what we have to do to go forward.
We today have the responsibility of making sure that new artists and activists, new scholars and poets know that this place continues to be a resource and a source of inspiration for the work that we must continue to do.
The Schomburg Center is knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is education.
The Schomburg Center is home, it is family, it is foundational.
The Schomburg Center is inspiration.
The Schomburg is with me in everything that I do.
Community, inside and out.
The Schomburg Center is us.
The Schomburg Center is you, and we invite each and every one of you to find your Schomburg Center.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Alicia Waller and Shani Baker, for opening us up this morning with Ella's song, We Who Believe in Freedom Cannot Rest Until It Comes. It's usually performed by Sweet Honey and the Rock with lyrics and music by Bernice Johnson Reagan, and it's a celebration of the life of civil rights activist Ella Baker. Thank you for joining us on this Juneteenth for the final day of the third annual Schomburg Center Literary Festival. While it has been necessary to offer the festival virtually as the center continues to its gradual opening, we certainly look forward to seeing you in person and outside in 2022. Thank you to our sponsors, Deutsche Bank America's Foundation and New York Life Foundation, for your continued support of this festival and knowing how important it was that we continue to offer it even virtually during the pandemic and quarantine. My name is Novella Ford, and I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs and Exhibitions here at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. My assignment, or the assignment of my team, was to gather contemporary writers from across the country and around the world to offer an intergenerational exploration of freedom, from the political notions to the everyday walking around, free in your body, in spirit or human form. Our theme this year, words like freedom, takes inspiration from Juneteenth and the opening line from Langston Hughes's poem, Refugee in America, which begins, "There are words like freedom, sweet and wonderful to say. On my heartstrings, freedom sings all day, every day." We close out the festival with a marathon of authors taking us from the United States to Uganda, from prayers and performance to joy and reckoning. Good books create space for all of our humanity to exist. I hope you consider the Schomburg Center Literary Festival a destination you can return to year after year to see yourself and to expand your understanding of Black cultures through literature. Please visit the festival website to see the complete lineup for today at schomburgcenterlitfest.org. Today, many will rise to celebrate Juneteenth and welcome the start of summer. Dr. Michelle Commander, who's Associate Director and Curator here at the Schomburg, recently said on CBS Morning, "Juneteenth is a moment of great liberation, one that was 2.5 years overdue in the lives of enslaved people in Galveston, Texas. Similar stories can be told in other parts of the country. For instance, in North Florida on May 20th, 1865, Floridians were notified of their freedom, and I learned that from artist Allison Janae Hamilton. And did you know that one of the first celebrations of Juneteenth in the North has been happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? What this resurgence and recovery of Juneteenth has provided is a chance to understand the broad view and statecraft used to exploit labor and to expend the lives of Black people in America, and the personal histories related to slavery that we all may carry. Juneteenth has not been an invisible marker of freedom, however, but it has been expanded to the psyche of many more Americans, and I hope that local communities continue to lead and direct these celebrations, even as the day has been named a federal holiday. In a thoughtful curation of a timely exhibition, Subversion and the Art of Slavery Abolition, now available to the public, Dr. Commander, who's also the curator, reminds us that it was enslaved people who led the charge for abolition. And while Juneteenth represents a moment in the arc of history, abolition was the longer cause. This exhibition highlights several of the ways that abolitionists engaged in the arts to agitate for enslaved people's liberty in the 18th and 19th centuries. Not only can you view familiar images of slave ships and chains, but delve deeper into the rich archives of the Schomburg Center's collection that include property ledgers and poetry, portraits of slave revolts and abolitionists, and a map of the Underground Railroad route to Canada, just to name a few of the items that you can see. I welcome you to visit the Schomburg's website at schomburg.org to learn more about how you can visit our latest exhibition in person and navigate our online exhibitions. James Baldwin wrote, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read." About 2 months ago, I was stopped in my tracks, as a good book will do. I was reading American Journal 50 Poems for Our Time, selected and introduced by Tracy K. Smith, then Poet Laureate of the United States. and this powerhouse collection of poems published in association with the Library of Congress, featuring 50 poets who celebrate and interrogate the history and the present of the United States. The poem I was reading begins, "Here the sentence will be respected." From there, Layli Long Soldier, a writer, author of Whereas, and a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation, makes plain the duality of President Abraham Lincoln, who in the same week of declaring the Emancipation Proclamation in December 1862, ordered the execution by hanging of 38 Dakota men, and thus presenting the troubling history of yet another event and co-signing the interconnectedness of the dispossession and displacement of Native people and Black peoples in this country. I'm so glad that we have a chance to welcome Layli Long Soldier to read her poem, 38.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Layli Kichitahanska, Layli Long Soldier, Machiapi, da Yahipi Nachante, Washte, Nabechu Sapi. So I said, I come here with a good heart and a warm hand, or something like that. I was traveling all day yesterday, and I'm trying to be normal now. But I'm so pleased that you read this piece, and so I'm happy to share it with you today. Excuse me. This is titled 38. Here, the sentence will be respected. I will compose each sentence with care by minding what the rules of writing dictate. For example, all sentences will begin with capital letters. Likewise, the history of this sentence will be honored by ending each one with appropriate punctuation, such as a period or question mark, thus bringing the idea to momentary completion. You may like to know, I do not consider this quote, creative piece. I do not regard this as a poem of great imagination or a work of fiction. Also, historical events will not be dramatized for a, quote, interesting read. Therefore, I feel most responsible to the orderly sentence, conveyor of thought. That said, I will begin. You may or may not have heard about the Dakota 38. If this is the first time you've heard of it, you might wonder, what is the Dakota 38? The Dakota 38 refers to 38 Dakota men who were executed by hanging under orders from President Abraham Lincoln. To date, this is the largest, quote, legal mass execution in US history. The hanging took place on December 26, 1862, the day after Christmas. This was the same week that President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. In the preceding sentence, I italicize same week for emphasis. There was a movie titled Lincoln about the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. The signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was included in the film Lincoln. The hanging of the Dakota 38 was not. In any case, you might be asking, why were 38 Dakota men hung? As a side note, the past tense of hang is hung, but when referring to the capital punishment of hanging, the correct past tense is hanged. So it's possible that you're asking, why were 38 Dakota men hanged? They were hanged for the Sioux Uprising. I want to tell you about the Sioux Uprising, but I don't know where to begin. I may jump around, and details will not unfold in chronological order. Keep in mind, I am not a historian. So I will recount facts as best I can, given limited resources and understanding. Okay. Before Minnesota was a state, the Minnesota region, generally speaking, was the traditional homeland for Dakota, Anishinaabe, and Ho-Chunk people. There's a lot happening in Minnesota these days, especially in the last year and a half or so. So these are the people who were originally there and are still there. During the 1800s, when the US expanded territory, they, quote, purchased land from the Dakota people as well as other tribes. But another way to understand that sort of purchase is Dakota leaders ceded land to the US government in exchange for money or goods, but most importantly, for safety of their people. Some say the Dakota leaders did not understand the terms they were entering, or they never would have agreed. Even others call the entire negotiation trickery. But to make whatever it was official and binding, the US government drew up an initial treaty. This treaty was later replaced by another, more convenient treaty, and then another. I've had difficulty unraveling the terms of these treaties, given the legal speak and congressional language. As treaties were abrogated or broken, and new treaties were drafted one after another, the new treaties often referenced old defunct treaties, and it is a muddy switchback trail to follow. Although I often feel lost on this trail, I know I am not alone. However, as best as I can put the facts together, in 1851, Dakota Territory was contained to a 12-mile by 150-mile long strip along the Minnesota River. But just 7 years later, in 1858, the northern portion was ceded or taken, and the southern portion was conveniently allotted, which reduced Dakota land to a stark 10-mile tract. These amended and broken treaties are often referred to as the Minnesota Treaties. The word Minnesota comes from Mini, which means water, and Shota, which means turbid. Synonyms for turbid include muddy, unclear, cloudy, confused, and smoky. Everything is in the language we use. For example, a treaty is essentially a contract between two sovereign nations. The US treaties with the Dakota Nation were legal contracts that promised money. It could be said this money was payment for the land the Dakota ceded, for living within assigned boundaries, a reservation, and for relinquishing rights to their vast hunting territory, which in turn made Dakota people dependent on other means to survive, money. The previous sentence is circular, akin to so many aspects of history. As you may have guessed by now, the money promised in the turbid treaties did not make it into the hands of Dakota people. In addition, local government traders would not offer credit to Indians to purchase food or goods. Without money, store credit, or rights to hunt beyond their 10-mile tract of land, Dakota people began to starve. The Dakota people were starving. The Dakota people starved. In the preceding sentence, the word starved does not need italics for emphasis. One should read the Dakota people starved as a straightforward and plainly stated fact. As a result, and without other options but to continue to starve, Dakota people retaliated. Dakota warriors organized, struck out, and killed settlers and traders. This revolt is called the Sioux Uprising. Eventually, the US cavalry came to Minnesota to confront the uprising. More than 1,000 Dakota people were sent to prison. As already mentioned, 38 Dakota men were subsequently hanged. After the hanging, those 1,000 Dakota prisoners were released. However, as further consequence, what remained of Dakota territory in Minnesota was dissolved or stolen. The Dakota people had no land to return to. This means they were exiled. Homeless, the Dakota people of Minnesota were relocated or forced onto reservations in South Dakota and Nebraska. Now, every year, a group called the Dakota 38 plus 2 riders conduct a memorial horse ride from Lower Brule, South Dakota to Mankato, Minnesota. The memorial riders travel 325 miles for 18 days, sometimes through sub-zero blizzards. By the way, you can look on YouTube and see some of these memorial rides. It's really beautiful. It happens every year. They conclude their journey on December 26th, the day of the hanging. Memorials help us focus our memory on particular people or events. Often, memorials come in the forms of plaques, statues, or gravestones. The memorial for the Dakota 38 is not an object inscribed with words, but an act. Yet I started this piece because I was interested in writing about grasses. So there is one other event to include, although it's not in chronological order, and we must backtrack a little. When the Dakota people were starving, as you may remember, government traders would not extend store credit to Indians. One trader named Andrew Myrick is famous for his refusal to provide credit to Dakota people by saying, if they are hungry, let them eat grass. There are variations of Myrick's words, but they are all something to that effect. When settlers and traders were killed during the Sioux Uprising, one of the first to be executed by the Dakota was Andrew Myrick. When Myrick's body was found, his mouth was stuffed with grass. I am inclined to call this act by the Dakota warriors a poem. There's irony in their poem. There was no text. Real poems do not really require words. I have italicized the previous sentence to indicate inner dialogue, a revealing moment. But on second thought, the words, let them eat grass, click the gears of the poem into place. So we could also say language and word choice are crucial to the poem's work. Things are circling back again. Sometimes when in a circle, if I wish to exit, I must leap and let the body swing from the platform out to the grasses. Thank you.
Thank you, Lele Long Soldier, for allowing us your time and sharing with us that historical narrative of injustice and resistance to settler colonialism. As we collectively gather across the country on the unceded land of Indigenous peoples, I ask you to join me in committing to learning more about the Indigenous elders and communities, both past and present, that reside in the communities that you live in. In 1791, the abolitionist William Wilberforce gave a speech before the British House of Commons, declaring that great responsibility came along with the awareness of slavery's cruelty. He ended his speech with the declaration, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say you did not know." It is our duty to expand our narratives, and if Black history is to be part of that correction of history, we must bring along as many narratives as we can, because as Fannie Lou Hamer told us, nobody's free until everybody's free. I want us to take 5 minutes for a moment of silence for those that we've lost in the tumult of the transatlantic slave trade, freedom fighters past and present, those transgendered lives that we are witnessing the systematic assault on, mourn our loved ones, as well as those 215 bodies that was found in Canada at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, where Indigenous children were taken from their families in an attempt to assimilate them. Please take this moment, however way you would, to acknowledge those who have passed and where we are going. Juneteenth is about recovery and reconnection, and hopefully will be about the reparative justice that acknowledges the toll of slavery and the economic and legal disadvantages in our culture today. As we close our program, let us not be deterred by the rage that may be inside of us and all the injustice that we experience, but also the joy and the dreams that we get to be because of our ancestors' imagination that we could be here. As this last song plays, it declares that we are not going to let anyone turn us around. And to take it back to the beginning, we who do believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Keep on.